It's a shocking and growing new trend among some drug addicts turning to common over-the-counter medicines to get high. I'm Jim Dunaway.
I'm Sherry Jackson. Thank you for joining us. People addicted to prescription painkillers and other opiates are now using anti-diarrhea medicines to feed their addiction. CBS 42 News reporter Jamie Ostroff spoke with experts in law enforcement and the medical community who are still trying to understand this trend. Jamie?
That's right, Sherry, and if you stop by a pharmacy, you might notice that certain over-the-counter cold medications are only available behind the counter. That's because they run the risk of being abused. But how about this stuff? It turns out it wasn't even until recently that doctors found out that Imodium was also being abused. Dr. Stefan Curtis is an addiction specialist at UAB. Last year, a patient came to him who was treating their withdrawal symptoms in a way Curtis had never heard of.
Yeah, I was completely surprised. I was always taught that Imodium cannot get to the brain and that it's purely good for treating diarrhea, basically. So initially, I didn't really believe him.
To understand why this patient turned to an anti-diarrhea medicine, you have to understand how that would even work.
All of us have opioid receptors in our bodies, in our brains and in our guts. And they work in different ways for different purposes. Part of the reason people with an opioid use disorder take Imodium is because if they take enough of it, they can sometimes get some of the opioid receptors in their brains to be sort of tickled by that Imodium that they take.
But for the active ingredient in Imodium to get to your brain, you're going to have to take a lot of it.
I've talked to patients who've taken over 100 pills at once.
While buying large quantities of certain medications trigger a red flag for law enforcement, Imodium is not one of those medications. Lieutenant Clay Hammock with the Shelby County Drug Enforcement Task Force says all he can do is spread awareness.
Be on the lookout for things like this to identify it and help correct that behavior so that loved one can continue on a healthy road to recovery.
All right, so taking too much Imodium can come with a lot of dangerous side effects, including an irregular heartbeat. Now, if you or someone you know is battling addiction, of course, the best advice is not to self-medicate, but to ask a doctor for help as soon as you can. We are live in Birmingham tonight. Jamie Ostroff, CBS 42 News.